They told us it was a simple extraction. Get in, get the asset, get out. 12 hours, maximum. We'd be home before sunrise, they said. But in the mountains of northern Afghanistan, nothing is ever simple. And the asset we were sent to retrieve, he wasn't what we expected. None of us knew that night would cost us everything we thought we understood about loyalty, duty, and what it truly means to be a soldier. My name is irrelevant now. What matters is what happened in those 72 hours that turned into the longest mission of our lives. We dropped from the Chinook at 2300 hours. 6 of us, Echo Team, the best damn operators the 5th Special Forces Group ever produced, or so we told ourselves between shots of whiskey and war stories. There was Sergeant First Class Marcus Webb, our team leader, a man who could read terrain like poetry and enemy movements like a children's book. He had the kind of calm that made you believe you were invincible, even when you weren't. Then came Rodriguez, our communications specialist, who could hack a satellite phone with a paperclip and sheer stubbornness. Chen was our sniper, a quiet ghost who spoke more through his scope than his mouth. Kowalski handled our heavy weapons, a Chicago kid who laughed too loud and loved too hard. Jackson was our medic, carrying more guilt than gauze, still haunted by the Marines he couldn't save in Helmand Province. And then there was me, demolitions expert, the guy who made things go boom when they needed to go boom, and sometimes when they didn't. The insertion was clean, too clean. We hit the ground in a valley that maps called the Corridor of Shadows, though locals had a different name for it. The place where voices stop. We didn't know why yet. The mountain air cut through our gear like frozen razors, and the silence was the kind that makes you check your hearing. No birds, no insects, nothing. Just 6 pairs of boots crunching through snow that hadn't seen sunlight in months. Our target was a compound 3 clicks northeast. Intelligence said an American contractor named David Ashford was being held there by a splinter faction that didn't fly any flag we recognized. Not Taliban, not ISIS, something else. Something that operated in the gaps between what governments acknowledged and what actually happened in these mountains. Ashford had been missing for 19 days. The official story was he'd been inspecting telecommunications equipment for a private firm. The unofficial story, the one whispered in briefing rooms with locked doors, was that Ashford knew things. Things about black budget programs. Things about money that disappeared into Afghan dust. Things that made powerful people very nervous. Webb held up a closed fist. We froze. He pointed 2 fingers at his eyes, then toward a ridgeline about 400 meters out. Chen was already moving, flowing upward through the rocks like water finding a crack. 30 seconds later, his voice crackled through our comms, barely a whisper. 2 sentries, thermal scopes. They're watching the valley, not the compound. Someone knew we were coming. The first rule of special operations is that if the enemy knows you're coming, you're already dead. The second rule is that sometimes you go anyway, because the mission matters more than the risk. Webb didn't hesitate. Chen, can you take them? Negative. The angle's wrong. If I drop one, the other will radio before I can adjust. Then we go around. Webb traced a path with his gloved finger, pointing toward a canyon that would add an hour to our approach, but keep us in the dead ground, invisible to thermal optics. We move now. Silent protocol. If anyone makes contact, the mission is compromised and we extract. Nobody plays hero tonight. Nobody ever plans to play hero. It just happens when everything else goes to hell. We move through that canyon like ghosts, each step calculated, each breath measured. The walls rose up on both sides, narrow enough that Kowalski had to turn sideways with his weapon system. Rodriguez kept checking his equipment, making sure the satellite uplink was still good. We needed that link. It was our lifeline to command, to air support, to the world outside this frozen hell. Halfway through the canyon, Rodriguez stopped. His face, barely visible under his night vision mount, had gone pale. We've got a problem. Talk to me, Webb said. The uplink just went dead. Not interference, not atmospheric. Someone cut our access at the source. Command killed our connection. The silence that followed was heavier than the snow-laden air. Jackson spoke first, his voice tight. That's not possible. They wouldn't cut us off mid-mission unless we're not supposed to come back. I finished. Webb's jaw clenched. You could see him processing. running through the scenarios, the possibilities, the implications. A team leader is only as good as his ability to adapt, and Webb was about to face the hardest adaptation of his career. Maybe it's a technical glitch. Maybe it's not a glitch. Rodriguez was already pulling out the backup transponder, the emergency beacon that would send our location, and a distress call to every allied unit within 200 clicks. He activated it. Nothing. Dead. They bricked it remotely. Someone doesn't want us calling for help. Kowalski lowered his weapon system, his breath coming out in visible clouds. So we're on our own. We complete the mission and hike out to the nearest fob. 40 clicks through hostile territory. Easy day, right? But Webb wasn't thinking about the hike out. He was thinking about why. Why cut us off? Why send us in the first place if they wanted us isolated? Rodriguez, before we lost comms, did you pull the latest intelligence on Ashford? Affirmative. Standard package, photo, last known location, what he was wearing when he disappeared. Show me. Rodriguez pulled up the digital file on his ruggedized tablet. The photo showed a man in his mid-40s, soft around the middle, wearing wire-rimmed glasses and a nervous smile. The kind of guy who looked uncomfortable in his own skin. That's him. David Ashford, communications contractor, clearance level 4, standard corporate liaison. Webb stared at the photo for a long moment. Chen, when you did your reconnaissance training at Fort Bragg, who taught the module on interrogation resistance? Colonel named Ashford, Chen said slowly, understanding dawning in his voice. David Ashford, but he wasn't soft. He was Delta, Tier 1. The guy could disassemble you psychologically in about 10 minutes. Wait, are you saying? I'm saying the man we're supposed to extract isn't a contractor. He's one of us, or he was. And if command is cutting us off, it means they don't want him extracted. They want him eliminated. The weight of that realization settled over us like an avalanche. We weren't a rescue team. We were an execution squad, and we'd walked right into it. Jackson's voice cracked through the darkness. So what do we do? Orders are orders. If this guy is dirty, if he's compromised, we don't know that. Webb cut him off. All we know is someone wants him dead and wants us to do it. Could be legitimate. Could be politics. Could be someone covering their tracks. But I'm not killing an American operator without knowing why. So we extract him, I said. We find out what's really happening. And if he is compromised, if he's sold out his country. Kowalski's question hung in the frozen air. Webb looked at each of us in turn. Then we make that call when we have all the facts. But right now we're being played. And I don't play well with others. We're getting Ashford out. Then we're getting answers. Anyone have a problem with that? Silence. Not because we agreed, but because Webb had just committed us to mutiny. We were no longer following orders. We were following our conscience. And in the military, that's the most dangerous choice you can make. We reached the compound at 0200 hours. It was smaller than the satellite imagery suggested. Just 3 buildings, arranged around a central courtyard. No lights, no movement, no guards. Chen swept the area through his scope, his voice tense. This is wrong. The whole setup is wrong. Where is the security? Where is the activity? Maybe they moved him, Rodriguez suggested. Or maybe it's a trap, I said. Webb considered both options, then made his choice. Jackson, Kowalski, your perimeter security. Anything moves, you drop it. Rodriguez, you're with me. Chen, find a hide and cover our exit. Demo, you're on the door. We go in fast, get Ashford, and get gone. 5 minutes, in and out. 4 minutes, 30 seconds. That's how long it took for everything to fall apart. The door wasn't locked. That should have been our first warning. I breached it anyway, moving into darkness so complete it felt solid. Webb and Rodriguez flowed in behind me. Weapons up, scanning corners, checking angles. The interior smelled wrong. Not the usual mix of sweat, gun oil and bad cooking that you get in hostile compounds. This smelled like copper and fear, like death had visited recently and hadn't quite left. We found Ashford in the back room. Correction. We found what was left of Ashford. He was sitting in a metal chair, head down, hands zip-tied behind his back. Blood had pooled beneath him, black in the green glow of our night vision. Rodriguez moved to check his pulse, already knowing what he'd find. He's been dead maybe 6 hours. Single gunshot to the back of the head, execution style. Webb moved closer, examining the scene with the methodical care of a man who'd seen too many dead bodies. His hands are zip-tied, but there's no bruising, no signs of struggle, no torture marks. Someone walked in and shot him. Quick, professional. Then why are we here? I asked. If he's already dead. The answer came from Rodriguez, who'd found a laptop computer sitting on a table across the room. Because of this, it's still on, still transmitting. Someone wanted us to find this. Webb moved to the laptop. On the screen was a video file, paused on the first frame. A man's face, but not Ashford. Someone older, wearing the uniform of a U.S. Army colonel. Webb's hand hovered over the trackpad. Should we? We're already in it this deep, I said. Might as well see what cost a man his life. Webb hit play. The colonel's face filled the screen, his expression grave. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of command and the burden of terrible knowledge. If you're watching this, it means David Ashford is dead. It means the operation failed. And it means you're probably the team sent to clean up the mess. My name is Colonel Richard Hayes. I was David's commanding officer for 6 years. I'm also the man who ordered his execution. Rodriguez whispered something in Spanish. A prayer maybe, or a curse. On screen, Hayes continued. Ashford discovered something he wasn't supposed to discover. Not about the enemy, about us. About a program called Nightfall. For the last 3 years, elements within our own command structure have been running weapons and intelligence to various Afghan factions. Not to fight terrorism, to sustain it, to keep the war going. Because war is profitable for the right people, and peace is expensive. The room felt colder, or maybe that was just our blood running ice. Ashford found the proof. Names, accounts, shipping manifests, everything. He was going to blow the whistle. Go to Congress, go to the press, go public. We couldn't allow that. Not because the program was right, but because exposing it would collapse operational security for legitimate missions across 3 continents. Hundreds of operators would be exposed, thousands of assets compromised, countless lives at risk. So we made a choice. We eliminated the threat. We eliminated Ashford. Hayes leaned closer to the camera, his eyes hollow. But here's what we didn't know. Ashford knew we were coming. He uploaded everything to a dead man's switch. If he doesn't log in every 72 hours, the files go public automatically. To every news organization in the world, to every intelligence agency, friend or foe, everything. Webb checked his watch. How long has Ashford been dead? About 6 hours, Rodriguez confirmed. So we have maybe 66 hours before the files release. On screen, Hayes kept talking. The laptop you're looking at contains the kill codes to disable the dead man's switch. But there's a problem. The codes are biometric encrypted. They require Ashford's handprint and retinal scan to activate. He's dead. The codes die with him, unless someone can find another way. The video ended. The room fell silent, except for the quiet hum of the laptop's cooling fan. Rodriguez was the first to speak. So we're looking at a global intelligence catastrophe in less than 3 days. And we're the only ones who know. Not the only ones. Chen's voice cracked through our comms, urgent and sharp. We've got movement. Multiple vehicles. 5 clicks out and closing fast. They're not trying to hide. Webb, we need to move now. Webb made his decision in the space between heartbeats. Grab the laptop. We're taking it with us. It's evidence, I protested. If we take it, we're part of the cover-up. And if we leave it, someone else takes it, and we lose any chance of controlling what happens next. Right now, we're the only variable that command didn't plan for. We're going to use that. Webb was already moving toward the door, his mind 3 steps ahead. Chen, plot us a route to the northwest. We're not going back to base. We're going dark. Going dark. In military terms, that means cutting all ties with command, becoming ghosts, operating without authorization, without support, without sanction. It means becoming everything we swore we'd never be. But Webb was right. We were the unexpected variable, and variables can change outcomes. We extracted from the compound 30 seconds before the vehicles arrived. Chen guided us through a series of narrow ravines, routes that wouldn't show up on any map, paths used by smugglers and shepherds and people who needed to disappear. Behind us we could hear shouting. Orders being barked in English, not locals. American operators, our own people, sent to make sure the job was finished, sent to make sure we didn't come back with questions. We moved through the darkness for 6 hours straight, pushing our bodies past exhaustion into that strange state where you're not quite awake and not quite dreaming, just moving, just surviving. When the sun finally broke over the eastern peaks, we found shelter in a cave system that Chen had spotted on the tactical maps, deep enough to hide 6 men, defensible if we needed to make a stand. Webb gathered us together, his face drawn with fatigue and something deeper, disillusionment, maybe, or just the weight of impossible choices. Here's where we stand. We can't go back to base. Command will either arrest us or disappear us. We can't go to the Afghans, because we don't know who's part of Nightfall and who isn't. We can't extract through Pakistan, because we're not cleared for cross-border operations. We're on our own, and we have about 60 hours to figure out how to stop a dead man's switch that requires a dead man's biometrics. So, we're just going to ignore the part where senior officers in our own army are running guns to the enemy. Kowalski's voice was hard, angry. We're just going to help cover that up. No, Webb said, we're going to expose it, but on our terms, in a way that doesn't compromise every operator in theater. Ashford was right about the corruption. Hayes was right about the consequences. Both things can be true. Our job is to find the path between them. Rodriguez had the laptop open, his fingers flying across the keyboard. I might have something. The biometric encryption is military grade, but it's not perfect. If I can isolate the algorithm, I might be able to brute force a bypass, but it'll take time and processing power. A lot of it. How much time? 48 hours, maybe 50, if nothing goes wrong. And if something goes wrong, Rodriguez looked up, his expression grim. Then, we become the most wanted men in the United States military. And the biggest intelligence leak in history happens on our watch. The hours that followed were the longest of my life. We took shifts, 3 on watch, 3 trying to sleep, but nobody slept. We just lay there, listening to Rodriguez's fingers on the keyboard, watching the cave entrance, wondering if the next sound we heard would be gunfire. Jackson cleaned his medical supplies for the 100th time. Kowalski field stripped his weapons, checked every round, every magazine, every piece of equipment. Chen disappeared into the shadows near the cave mouth, becoming part of the rocks, his sniper rifle an extension of his body. Webb stood apart, staring at nothing, making calculations we couldn't see. And me, I checked my explosives, because if we were going to make a stand, I wanted to make sure it was memorable. 20 hours in, Rodriguez made a breakthrough. I've got partial access. The system is layered. There are 3 keys, the handprint, the retinal scan, and a third biometric I can't identify. But there's a back door, a way to input the kill codes manually. If you have all 3 biometrics, someone built in a failsafe. Who? Webb asked. According to the metadata, Ashford himself. He built in a way to shut down his own dead man switch, but only if someone had access to his biometric data, which died with him, I said. Not exactly. Rodriguez pulled up another file. Military personnel records. Every operator in special operations has full biometric data on file, fingerprints, retinal patterns, even DNA profiles. It's for identification if we're captured or killed. If I can access those files, you can recreate Ashford's biometrics digitally. Webb finished. Can you do it? If I can get into the personnel database, yes. But that database is Fort Meade level security, NSA. I'd need access to a military network terminal and about 6 hours of uninterrupted time. Webb smiled for the first time in 24 hours. It wasn't a pleasant smile. Then, we're going to Bagram Airfield, one of the largest U.S. military installations in Afghanistan, home to thousands of personnel, layers of security, and enough firepower to level a small country. Webb wanted to infiltrate it with 5 men and no support. It was insane. It was impossible. It was exactly the kind of plan that might actually work. We go in during shift change, Webb explained, laying out the concept on the K4 with rocks and dirt. 0530. When the day crew is arriving and the night crew is leaving. Maximum confusion, maximum bodies moving around. We're in uniform. We look like we belong there. We act like we have every right to be there, because we do. We're still US soldiers. We just happen to be disobeying orders. At the moment, they'll have our faces flagged, Chen pointed out. Probably. So we don't give them clean looks. We stay in crowds, keep our heads down, move with purpose. Rodriguez gets to the communications center, does his magic. We extract before anyone realizes what happened. And if we get caught, Jackson asked, then we tell the truth. All of it. Let the chips fall where they may. But we don't tell them about the laptop. That stays hidden. That stays our insurance policy. It was a terrible plan. It had 1,000 failure points. It required luck we probably didn't have, and timing that would need to be perfect. We started moving toward Bagram that night. We arrived 12 hours later, exhausted, filthy, looking like we'd been through hell, which was good, because at Bagram, looking like you'd been through hell was normal. Combat operators came and went at all hours, and nobody asked too many questions if you looked tired enough. Webb was counting on that, counting on the bureaucratic chaos of a large military installation, where the left hand never quite knew what the right hand was doing. We approached from the north, using a vehicle access point that serviced the fuel depots. Kowalski had liberated some identification cards from a supply convoy 3 hours earlier. They weren't perfect, but they didn't need to be. They just needed to pass a quick visual scan. The guard at the gate was young, bored, going through the motions. He glanced at our IDs, glanced at us, waved us through. Just like that, we were inside. The most wanted men in theater, walking through Bagram airfield like we owned the place. Rodriguez headed for the communications center. The rest of us spread out, trying to blend in, trying not to look like we were trying not to be noticed. I found myself in the DFAC, the dining facility, surrounded by soldiers eating breakfast and complaining about the usual things soldiers complain about. The food, the heat, the missions, the brass, normal complaints. I envied them. They had no idea how fragile their world was, how close it was to shattering. 3 hours passed, 4. Rodriguez had said 6. But every minute felt like an hour. Chen had positioned himself near the communications center with a clear line of sight, ready to provide cover if things went wrong. Webb had disappeared into the administrative sections, doing something he hadn't shared with the rest of us. Jackson and Kowalski were monitoring the security response patterns, watching for any sign that we'd been made. At hour 5, my radio clicked twice. Rodriguez's signal. He was done. Time to move. We converged on the extraction point, a maintenance gate on the south side of the base that saw minimal traffic. Rodriguez was already there, laptop secured, looking like he'd aged 10 years in 6 hours. I got it. All 3 biometric keys. But there's a problem. Hayes lied, or he didn't know the full truth. The dead man switch isn't just about releasing files. It's about triggering something else. Something buried in the Nightfall program. Buried how? Webb demanded. There are coordinates, locations across Afghanistan, Pakistan, and 3 other countries. Each location has a numeric code. I think they're accounts, bank accounts, and if the switch triggers, the account's empty. Hundreds of millions of dollars moved simultaneously into public record. Every transaction, every name, every person who took money to keep Nightfall running. Webb processed this, so Ashford wasn't just threatening to expose the program. He was threatening to expose everyone involved. Every politician, every officer, every contractor who profited from it. Exactly. And that's why they killed him. Not to protect the program, to protect themselves. We were 10 meters from the gate when the alarm sounded. Not the general alarm, but the security alert. The one that meant someone had been identified as a threat. They'd found us. Maybe facial recognition had finally caught up. Maybe someone had noticed Rodriguez in the communications center. Maybe we just run out of luck. The reason didn't matter, only the response. Run, Webb ordered. We ran through the gate, past surprised guards, into the vehicle staging area. Kowalski grabbed a Humvee, keys still in the ignition. someone's terrible mistake. We piled in. He gunned it. Behind us, the base erupted in controlled chaos. Security forces mobilizing, vehicles moving to block exits, helicopters spinning up. We had maybe 2 minutes before the entire military apparatus of Bagram Airfield came down on our heads. Rodriguez was typing frantically, setting up the bypass, inputting the biometric codes, racing against time and bullets and the weight of impossible choices. Chen had his rifle out the window, firing controlled shots at pursuing vehicles, aiming for tires, for engine blocks, for anything that would slow them down without killing fellow soldiers. Because that was the line we wouldn't cross. We were many things now. Deserters, traitors maybe, but we weren't murderers. How long? Webb shouted over the chaos. 30 seconds. I just need 30 seconds. We didn't have 30 seconds. We had maybe 10 before the pursuit overwhelmed us. So Webb made a choice. He grabbed the wheel from Kowalski, jerked it hard left, sending us off the road and into a construction area. The Humvee crashed through temporary barriers, scattering workers, careening toward a half-finished structure. Everybody out. Now, we bailed from the moving vehicle, hitting the ground hard, rolling, coming up with weapons ready. The Humvee kept going, smashing into the building's support column, wedging itself deep. Webb turned to Rodriguez. Finish it. Whatever happens, finish it. Rodriguez dropped to one knee, the laptop balanced on his thigh, his fingers flying. 10 seconds. 9, 8. The first security team arrived, weapons raised, shouting orders. Webb stepped forward, hands up but not surrendered, his voice carrying that same calm authority it always had. Stand down. We're American soldiers. We're not the enemy here. 7, 6, 5. On the ground. All of you. Now. 4, 3, 2. Rodriguez hit enter. The laptop screen flashed green. Done. The dead man's switch was disabled. Ashford's final threat had been neutralized. For better or worse, the decision was made. And then Rodriguez did something none of us expected. He pulled a small USB drive from his pocket, plugged it into the laptop, and hit another key. I made a copy. Everything. Every file, every name, every transaction. Hayes wanted to protect the operators. I get that. I respect that. But the people who did this, the people who turned a war into a profit machine, they don't get to walk away clean. Rodriguez, what did you do? Webb's voice was quiet, knowing. I sent the files, not to the news, not to the public, to the Inspector General, to the DOD, Criminal Investigation Command, to people who can investigate properly, build cases, do it right. The bad guys get caught, the good guys stay protected. Ashford was right about the corruption. Hayes was right about the consequences. I split the difference. The security team was closing in, weapons trained, fingers on triggers. We were seconds from detention, from courts-martial, from spending the rest of our lives in military prison. And Rodriguez was smiling. Sometimes the right choice is the one that costs you everything. Ashford knew that. That's why he built the switch, not just to threaten, but to hope that someone would care enough to use it right. They took us hard, zip-tied our hands, put bags over our heads, threw us into trucks. The next 72 hours were a blur of interrogation rooms and military lawyers and officers whose faces I never clearly saw. They wanted to know everything, what we knew, what we'd done, where the files were. Webb told them the truth, all of it. He didn't minimize, didn't justify, just laid out the facts and let them draw their own conclusions. 3 weeks later, the first arrests were made, not soldiers in the field but contractors, middle management types who'd gotten rich on blood and chaos. The investigation was quiet, classified, the kind of thing that would never make the news, but it was real. People were held accountable. Not everyone, probably not even most, but enough to matter. As for us, Echo Team was officially disbanded. We each received administrative discharges, not honorable, not dishonorable, just endings that said we'd been there, and now we weren't. We lost our careers, our reputations, our places in the brotherhood we'd built our lives around. Webb went back to Montana, working construction and not talking about the war. Rodriguez taught computer science at a community college. Chen disappeared into the mountains of Colorado. Kowalski became a cop in Chicago. Still serving, still trying to do right. Jackson runs a clinic in rural Georgia, finally saving more people than he loses. And me, I found peace in small-town life, teaching shop class to kids who need to learn that sometimes the most powerful thing you can build is trust. People ask me sometimes if it was worth it, losing everything, to do what we thought was right. I tell them about David Ashford, a man I never met but whose choice echoed across my entire life. He found corruption in the system he'd sworn to serve, and he refused to look away, even when looking away would have been easier, safer, more profitable. He paid for that choice with his life. We paid for our choice with our careers. But we paid, and sometimes that's the only currency that matters. The lesson isn't about heroism. Real heroism isn't dramatic. It's not about breaching doors, or winning firefights, or completing impossible missions. Real heroism is choosing the hard right over the easy wrong, when no one will ever thank you for it. It's standing up when standing up costs you everything. It's believing that some things matter more than your career, your comfort, your life. Ashford believed that. Webb believed that. And for 72 hours in the mountains of Afghanistan, 6 soldiers believed it too. We didn't save the world. We didn't stop the war. We didn't even really stop nightfall. Programs like that don't die. They just change names and move to different shadows. But we refused to be complicit. We refused to let evil hide behind the flag we'd sworn to serve. And in the end, maybe that's all any soldier can do. Be faithful to the oath, even when the system isn't. Be loyal to the principles, even when people fail them. Be true to the belief that we're supposed to be the good guys, and good guys don't get to look away just because looking is hard. If there's a final truth I took from those 72 hours, it's this: your character isn't defined by the easy choices you make when everyone's watching. It's defined by the hard choices you make when you're alone in the dark, when no one will ever know, when doing the right thing costs you everything. In those moments, you find out who you really are, and you live with that discovery for the rest of your life. We were Echo Team. We were the best of the best, until we became something more important. We became men who chose honor over orders. And I'd make that choice again, every single time, because at the end of your life, the only thing you get to keep is your integrity. Everything else is just borrowed time. If this story moved you, if it made you think about the cost of doing right in a world that often rewards doing wrong, leave a comment below. Share your thoughts. Share your own stories of impossible choices and hard truths. And subscribe to hear more stories about the men and women who face these choices every single day, in uniform and out, fighting battles that never make the headlines, but define what it means to serve something greater than yourself. Because these stories matter, the truth matters, and remembering that some things are worth the cost, that matters most of all.